Morning, everybody, and welcome back to the lab. Sitting with you this morning, you have David Farwick and your main host, Lou Follenkamp. We hope you guys have been enjoying, this wonderful summer weather. Um, it's been absolutely gorgeous, and we finally did get some rain. I feel like I sound like an old man when I say that, but my grass has been
We
nothing.
needed it.
My grass has been nothing but just like crunchy grossness, and now I feel like I can actually mow it and not kill it. Um, Sorry.
Yeah. Taking out your New Balances there too, Lewis.
And my khaki shorts,
There
my
you go.
tucked in t-shirt. It's been great.
More
Um,
of an Air Monarch guy myself.
that'll be good. No, it'll be good. No, but I did want to apologize. I mean, obviously, over the last 3 weeks, we haven't had an episode come out, and that's majority my fault. I have been um, all over the United States these last 2, 3 weeks. So it's been very busy, but a lot of good projects on the way. So I'm pretty pumped about that. So it'll be good. Um, but Dave and I have a nice little kind of little discussion point today. Um, I'm excited about this one actually. I think it's going to be good. Um, so one of the things in athletics and in the in the sports medicine rehab setting is accelerated recovery, right? So I guess Dave, if you want to put that in more of a perspective, I guess for people, how like we want to basically say that we can't.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
the idea here is that you're speeding up a healing time frame or making somebody ready quicker. So I
Mhm.
guess like we just need to like kind of define like what is recovery, right? So this is going to be pretty finite definition, at least like in literature. I believe recovery is defined as the amount of glycogen that you have in your muscles.
Mhm.
So like when they look at like quantifying are you recovered, I think they're talking about your ability to put stores back into your muscle tissue,
Mhm.
which of course leads us down this next rabbit hole of why are people selling recovery if that's the definition of it and how do you quantify it, right?
Mhm.
So obviously there's tons of different ways that people are doing metrics. There's like heart rate reserve, there's HRV, there's the Whoop, there's all this other stuff that goes along with it.
Mhm.
Um, but I'm pretty sure the majority of at least kind of like strength and conditioning and all that defines it by like HRV or glycogen within the cell. So I think that having that definition is going to be key here as far as when we come back to it, as far as it's helping debunk, quantify, and actually explain the process.
I agree. That was good. Um, so like obviously one of the best things in rehab and in the strength conditioning world is we're trying to make people better, right? And I mean, how many times have you heard us discuss the big three about like eating right, sleeping right, and then hydrating? Now, is that going to like make your recovery rate like 150%? Like, no, like anything above 100%, you're really not going to be able to get above that. So the only thing you can do though is you can make the process more efficient, right? So like you want to have those three things on board, so that you're not working against yourself. You have adequate building blocks basically for protein synthesis. You have hydration, for basically transporting things through the circulatory system so that you have different, basically like cellular structures that are hydrated and ready to go. Um, and then sleeping for nervous system performance. So like there's a lot of different things that we already talked about in terms of basics in past episodes that if those are not already on your team, the process of recovery becomes basically it's not going to be efficient. You're going to be working at like maybe like a 75, 80% when there's other things that
Yeah.
you're adding in.
The way I always like to phrase this for people is like if those aren't met, and you can kind of throw in, say, probably creatine and electrolytes in there too,
Hmm.
if you want to get to the weeds of it. But
Hmm.
it's like if you're trying to stack a pyramid and you want to peak towards something, right? So if you are wiping out the base level of your pyramid, you can't build it any taller.
Hmm.
So, like when you're not meeting these needs, no matter what you do, you can't stack structures on a shit frame or like a shit base. So if you continue to like have these habits and just put them in place, you'll notice that you'll feel like your workouts stick more. You're going to have more of like a go button. You'll notice weights feel lighter,
Mhm.
um, aches, pains, fatigue, um, joint crepitus, stuff like that can kind of naturally kind of come out of play if you just meet some like basic pieces. Um, I think like as far as definitionally too, like we've talked about this, depending on the size of the structure, you're looking at 48 to 72 hours for recovery, no
Right.
questions asked, and that's not really debatable. Like you might be able to get away with some things for a while, but you're not going to have the same pop, right? So in this like program that we do right now, we do a heavy lift lower on Monday and Thursday, and then we usually get extra squats in Saturday. And Saturday kind of runs pretty close to that time frame. So I usually kind of monitor the volume or take it down a little bit just based upon how I'm feeling that day because I know I'm in violation of said rule here.
Mhm.
But yeah, so if you can kind of just come back to the basics, think about the definitions of like what is recovery.
Mhm.
Ultimately, it's your habits, and it's going to be this 48 to 72-hour time frame specific to working out. Now, a lot of us don't have the luxury of being able to rest in between sessions, meaning like if you're a baseball player, um, sometimes basketball players, you have these tournaments that just kind of run back to back to back to back.
Mhm.
And yeah, that just kind of sucks. It's not ideal, but you can mitigate some of the risk if you just build in these periods of rest, make sure that you have your habits in place, etc. But yeah, I think that's good as far as like setting a foundation to help yourself mitigate or minimize injury risk and set yourself up for success.
Yeah, especially like as you age, those natural processes kind of become more inefficient. So like especially the fact that your body even starts to kind of work against you in terms of sustaining muscle mass. So like as you age and you get, I can't remember the specific age. I think it's like what is it, 35?
35 to 40. And this
30,
is without intervention, guys. Like you're not doomed to this. So
yeah.
take this with a grain of salt.
I was gonna say don't panic, but usually after a specific age, 35 to 40 years old, your body will actually start going through a process called sarcopenia, which is basically where if you are not stimulating the muscles, you're basically going to naturally begin to lose muscle mass. Now the rate I think varies greatly between like if you are incorporating resistance training versus not. But then like if you were to look at it, there's actually a really cool, they did like a cross slice, cross-sectional slice of two different 70-year-olds, one who had never worked out and one who was a cyclist, and they showed the quadriceps. And the one who had never worked out, basically, you could see where like there was fatty infiltration of the quadriceps. You can see like there's the entire slice, and you see like that little bit of muscle, and then the rest of it was just fat. And then they showed the cyclist, and it was literally just nothing but quad, like nothing but just muscle mass. So like it's not impossible, or it's not like inevitable that you're going to lose muscle mass, but you can work to maintain it as well. Um, you just got a few processes that you need to really kind of think about. So like protein synthesis is probably right up there on the pedestal for me with that. Because you want to be able to maintain muscle mass, then that means you need to be giving it the building blocks to kind of facilitate protein synthesis. So like, are you eating enough protein? Are you not eating enough protein? That's usually one of my questions with a lot of my older athletes, at least the ones that are trying to still do marathons or are trying to compete in Olympic weightlifting? Like those are main questions that need to be answered right away because otherwise maybe your pain isn't necessarily movement related and it's more physiological related on that bend. So like you need to be doing that.
Yeah, this person is definitely going to be somebody who has multiple nagging injuries. Um, if
Hmm.
you look at like the course of like their season or their past 2 or 3 seasons, they've kind of like come in with a laundry list of issues, and they can't seem to figure out why they keep getting hurt.
Yep.
And it's pretty obvious, like once you see this person and then you ask them the question, and usually it's, I don't know how much I'm eating.
Hmm.
And that's kind of the first place to start. And then if you ask them to track, it's just grossly under their daily recommended protein goal for their activity level.
Hmm.
Yep. And
You said.
yep, a pretty good place to start with that is usually about a gram per pound of body weight,
Hmm.
and it can go up based upon your activity level.
Hmm.
So some of these guys that are actually doing 2 a days, 3 a days, etc., probably need more.
Hmm.
Um, and then obviously fill in like your other macros around like your activity needs, but
Hmm.
that tends to be the one that drives a lot of issues, at least from what I've seen.
Hmm. That's why getting with a dietitian, especially like if you want to continue to remain competitive, getting with a dietitian sometimes can be the absolute, like cherry on top for people because it's like that it's been that missing link for them, maybe because they've never really had to focus on it so much. And now it needs to become a key component to their training. I mean, you would think it'd be like, oh, like what can I do? Can I add blood flow restriction training into this? Or maybe I need to do some needling just to reduce some of the tension and then I can go back to training as hard as I am. It's like you can't throw modalities at this to have
and
success.
and let's talk about what that's supposed to do.
Yeah.
So at the baseline of any intervention that you're trying to do with your hands,
Hmm.
you're trying to drive blood flow.
Hmm.
Blood flow carries nutrients. It doesn't matter how much I cup you if you're not putting nutrients in your body.
Thank you.
But that's another debate within itself. Um,
Yeah.
so if somebody is selling you recovery at one of these places, and let's say it's a cash based person, and they're like, it's $50 for cupping
Yeah.
or whatever shit. So
Hmm.
there's actually not evidence to show that scraping or cupping increases blood flow. You're actually just breaking the capillaries in your skin.
Yep.
So that's that's a peeve, but
Yes, that drives.
whatever. I have to say it.
Yeah, it hurts me a little bit when I'm traveling and I'm hearing people talking about ways that they can accelerate recovery, or like I'm just scrolling through Instagram and I see a post about someone talking about how, um, we have these wellness sessions where we can do scraping, cupping, and like maybe it does help you with your mobility and things of that nature, but like you're not going to be accelerating recovery.
Sure. What you're doing there is you're actually confusing your nervous system. You're,
Hmm.
you're not facilitating recovery. So
No.
anytime that you have a manipulation, a needle, a cup, a massage, a scrape, what you're doing is you're giving your nervous system a different stimulus and buying a transient time period to then move and fix yourself. So as much as we want to believe our hands-on does help, it's more of a placebo effect or you're affecting the nervous system. And unfortunately, that's just the cold hard facts of it.
Exactly. Exactly. And then I think besides like the nutrition portion of things, and then also the what we just kind of discussed on, um, I think we need to talk about hormones a little bit and kind of like the natural processes. So like as we age, what happens to so like for a male, what happens to your natural testosterone levels, right? Um, so like
Yeah,
testosterone
this is an interesting one.
testosterone plays a really big role. I know people usually hear testosterone and they think, oh, TRT, and it's or they think of basically like, well, how is that really going to help me in the long run? I've had people ask me about this in the clinic actually about 2 days ago. It was kind of a fun conversation. But testosterone plays a really big role in muscle repair and then also in growth and maintaining mass. Um, and then on the opposite end, I mean, do you think we should dive into cortisol or no?
um,
Maybe
well,
after.
yeah. So obviously, there's anabolic effect of testosterone, and
Hmm.
usually it's proportional to the amount of testosterone in your system.
Hmm.
So this is a weird conversation because the range is so big. So when you look at like where it's derived from, I believe it's the Framingham study in Massachusetts.
Couldn't tell you.
So they take 18-year-olds to 80-year-olds, and then they created this broad spectrum of a recommended what's good, right? The issue with that is inherently if you're 18,
Hmm.
your hormones are going berserk. And if you're 80, you barely have anything left. And your pituitary probably looks like a raisin or something. So lumping these together and not giving like an age stratification of where your testosterone is probably not the best recommendation, and it's why TRT is in the space. And to be frank, I'll probably explore it, once I have a kid or whatever. But it's gonna be more for like the energy component of stuff, not necessarily
Hmm.
the anabolic effect. And there's also ranges that you have to stay within that make it safe. So a lot of your bodybuilders, unfortunately, go two, three, four, 10 times the amount of testosterone, and this ruin their hormones. But yeah, so in general, I would say you probably want to be more towards the middle or the upper end of the normative range.
Hmm.
Um, and obviously, it's different for everybody. So, but yeah, there is a proportional decrease with age, especially without taking intervention.
Hmm.
Um, and I think we need to talk about eating um, cholesterol. So it's assumed that cholesterol is bad, but the cholesterol is actually a derivative of your sex hormones, meaning
Hmm.
testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, etc. So sometimes animal fat can have a nice positive effect on that.
Hmm. It's a necessary thing.
Yep. And basically everything that we were talking about. So somebody who's probably going to look good on this test is going to have a nice foundation of the sleep, controlling your stressors,
Yeah.
probably eating animal products, lifting heavy, you know,
Hmm.
that type of mold.
Yeah. Yeah. Large, heavy sets at compound movements are wonderful for just increasing like your serum testosterone levels. So like that is big.
Yeah. And also not overtraining. So
Yeah.
taking your rest days is going to be another one too.
True.
So I guess kind of brings us to our inverse or cortisol. So what is this? Basically, it's a chronic exposure to stress. Um, it will cause this hormone to rise, right? So this is the person who's probably stressed out, um, chronically underslept.
Mhm.
They're probably pissed off all the time. Kind of view the world in a negative light. I mean,
Hmm.
it's kind of this archetype, at least from what I've seen, or somebody who's just
Hmm.
chronically in a bad cycle,
Yeah.
underfed, underslept, overworked.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah,
I think like just kind of giving two definitions, um, because you used the word anabolic before and then you use the word catabolic now.
yep,
Uh, so like the old phrase that I used to have and it actually was written into my strength conditioning book years ago. Anna builds and it showed like a little girl with like some building blocks and the cat was like sitting over there in the corner and the cat breaks it down. So that's the way I kind of remembered how certain hormones would kind of help or basically the natural processes of what they do in the body. So like anabolic means that there's going to be growth, it's going to be building, whereas catabolic means it's going to be breaking it down. So I just think about this like little kid playing with blocks, and then you have this cat waiting in the corner ready to just swipe it and just knock it straight off the counter. Um, yeah, cortisol is really big. It's a very good catabolic chemical in your body with basically reducing or not reducing increasing muscle breakdown. So like you were already saying that archetype and how that can also kind of work against you.
yeah, and it's chronic exposure, guys. Like this is a completely normal process.
Mm-hmm.
So I know I want to say cortisol spikes in the morning or something like that as a way to wake you up.
Mm-hmm.
So like it's a normal process, but it's more chronic long term exposure.
Hmm.
It is not the presence of. So like let's definitely put that out there that there's a happy medium with everything. And yeah, chronic exposure to these stressful situations yields a negative result.
Hmm. It's like too much of a good thing is bad. Too much of a
Yep.
bad thing is bad.
It's even say like once again, it's still that guy who's or girl who's pretty fit, and they're coming in and they just have a laundry list of injuries over the past couple of years. Like this is and it's because you're putting your body in a chronic state of stress or deprivation.
Hmm.
So obviously that has other, you know, neurological effects too,
Hmm.
because we all know like our fight or flight system, right?
Hmm.
So in recovery, it is best to try to get into your parasympathetic nervous system as soon as possible. So once you hit your stimulus, boom, you need to get out and do something that's like down regulatory, right? So something that's going to put your heart rate lower. So possibly just like a walk. A lot of guys prescribe after like a Metcon, maybe just get on the bike and just hit it at low RPMs.
Hmm.
Um, some people even say like eating immediately after isn't the best thing, but whatever. Please eat your food. But yeah, you're trying to take down your nervous system in order to help clear the stress response.
Hmm.
And then this is going to help put you back in your anabolic protein synthesis environment. Whereas if you're in constant deprivation or high levels of activity, you're constantly spinning your fight or flight response, which is going to spike your cortisol because it's perceived stress. So staying in this like situation for way too long usually winds up in an injury.
Hmm.
But once again, it's a chronic exposure in like you're ignoring a bunch of yellow flags.
Hmm.
You're probably waking up and you're pushing through days that your body doesn't have a good go switch, and you have all of these signs of recovery, and you just ignore them. So like, there's plenty of steps on this process that like can kind of inform you that you can avoid something.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely like for example, overtraining or like maybe like some I guess you could say what do you call them, yellow flags that like this is beginning to happen would be like let's say you
Yep.
are like numbers that you should be hitting consistently are starting to become misses. That's probably something that you need to look into more of like where you're missing outside of the gym. Like, and I mean, like, I wouldn't even say like max numbers. There's some days where 85% is going to feel like an absolute load. And that could be maybe you just worked a 9 to 5. Your brain's just not all there right now. Um, I'm talking like you're working at like your 55, 65%, maybe even 70%. And like it feels like the weight of the world is on your shoulders, or you're trying to press the weight of the world off your chest for a bench press.
Yeah.
Those are some
Yes.
telltale signs.
Yep. Some really good markers on this is going to be bar speed,
Hmm.
and like
Velocity.
this is actually where like your HRV comes in. So if your bar is moving slower than I think it's
Hmm.
like 0.8 meters a second, then you're not really getting the benefit of the rep, especially at those lower percentages. And I don't know. I think HRV is a little bit independent person to person, but if you notice that it's off, like
Hmm.
if you wear that whoop or whatever,
Hmm.
and you feel like it's like the closer is worse. So you want it to have larger separation. So if you're usually around 100 and all of a sudden it drops to 10, this is probably going to be one of those
Hmm.
flaggy moments for you.
Yeah.
Or if you're going to show up, just
Mhm.
do less.
No, exactly. So HRV is heart rate variability, meaning it's the variability of time between contractions, right? So if that is like Dave was already saying, like really small, that means your body is keeping up a pretty good pace, and there's not really a whole lot of what would you say, the reaction of the cardiovascular system is pretty minimized. You're just kind of sustaining.
Yeah. So if you have like a resting heart rate and let's say it's 60 and like it's raised, it typically indicates that you're in a stressed response,
Hmm.
right? So it's all just relative to you. Meaning you could start higher, but if it elevates at rest when you wake up, this is going to be a nice indicator that your body's in some stress.
Hmm. You know, there's actually some really cool studies out there right now about like auto-regulatory training where, um, let's say you wake up one morning and your HRV is like 10, like it's not great, it's really small. You would go and do workout like C, and like that's how you feel that day. That's the workout you have planned for that day. That's what you're gonna do. Whereas like let's say you wake up and your HRV is like 100 plus, and you're gonna go and you're gonna do the workout A because you're recovered, or you're recovered. Your body is signaling that it's ready for the stimulus, it's ready for that. You're gonna go do the hard work today. Now, I would like to look into that more. I mean, in theory, it sounds like it would be absolutely perfect, and I know that like Whoop does that. Um,
Yeah, the issue I have with this is some people use it as a crutch.
mhm,
So the other side of the coin here is you need adequate stress, and sometimes people just find every excuse in the book to not put themselves in a hard situation.
mhm.
So I'm kind of in between on it because like I have in my schedule probably 4 days a week that I can work out, and I don't give a shit what a whoop says. I'm gonna do it,
I
and like
agree.
that's just how my life works. So like I've kind of gotten rid of it and just defaulted back on habits. So
Mhm,
you know, need definitely 6 hours of sleep. Need to have ate pretty well around that training window, and
mhm.
need to stay hydrated. And that's just kind of that's it,
Yeah.
at least for like. But that's for me. I'm not trying to go for performance, right?
Mhm,
So where that stuff can be advantageous is like when you have the person who's kind of training 5, 6 days a week,
mhm,
have everything dialed in, and you're actually trying to compete at something.
mhm.
But it is all a fine balance based upon where you're at in your life too.
Yeah.
So you might find that like you're growing up and like you're accumulating responsibility, and all of a sudden 5, 6 days a week is not going to cut it because you have to do other stuff. So make the adjustment, and it's going to help lower your overall stress.
Mhm.
Look at this guest podcaster.
Hi, my good puppy. No,
Well,
but
get a dog. That'll help lower your stress too.
that's trying to get
Come
downstairs
on up.
for me.
Come on
Um,
up.
that's a good point to make. Is like sometimes we try to push the envelope. Hi, my good puppy.
Yep.
You talk about a good dog. That's a good dog right there. Uh, but I think that definitely finding the time is it can sometimes be difficult, but then being realistic with what is your recovery aspect to be like. So like working a 9 to 5 job, or maybe you're a firefighter and you have different days of the week when you have your work. Maybe you're in the morning, maybe you're at night, maybe you're a 12-hour shift and you got three or two in a row, and then you got one day off, and then you got another day on. Like planning out your training regimen needs to be kind of based around work sometimes, as much as I hate to say that. Um, because I mean, we talk about work-life balance all the time, and that's supposed to be like an imperative part of maintaining a healthy lifestyle as a physical therapist, because we should be role models for that. And I truly believe that physical therapists should work out, um, because I mean that's kind of like, I don't know, that's a whole soap.
It's it's the preach what you practice thing,
Yeah, you should definitely be,
and not practice what you preach. Like you have to go through the process because it will make it so much more streamlined if you've had exposure to it.
Mhm. Plus, I think it gives you a point of talking like with your patients that like, hey, like like it gives you the opportunity to be more empathetic to their issues and like their pains, because like you've been there, you've understood that training process, you know what it's like to be away from training when you can't do it. So like when people were I actually I posted your butt squatting, and I had a few people who said no, and so I was like, oh man, I really want to know why they don't think a PT should have to work out. And one never really gave me an answer. So I kind of thought that was funny, and I haven't reached out to the other one yet. But I definitely think that if you're going to be a physical therapist, you should have some form. Now, I'm not saying you need to be like the high upper echelon of like fitness and like go compete in the CrossFit games, or go run out there on a Sunday night and go play in the NFL games. But I'm saying that you should at least have some form or idea of how to exercise and kind of show that you do push yourself on a regular basis, and then that will carry over into your practice. Um,
Yeah,
but
and at least I think the majority of us are getting into this because we enjoy physical activity, and like it helps us mentally through life,
mhm.
right? So in the absence of that, a lot of us are kind of lost. And I think that's kind of empathetical piece behind it.
Like I said, it gives you a point of talking with them.
Yep.
Uh, but kind of going back to our original, I kind of like talking about that though. That's a big soapbox for me. I love talking with my students about that. I love talking with other clinicians about that. Uh, but back to our topic on recovery here and like the acceleration portion of it, I definitely think that kind of coming back to like what we were talking about recovery wise. Dave, you've already listed off like three really big points is one, having just a consistent sleep schedule. You said like at least 6 to 8 hours. Now, some people might need more than 8 hours. Some people, I don't know how you could do it. I've seen people who function on less, and that is, I don't think necessarily something to
That
do long
that
term.
is one thing you get better at with age is you require less because you have less growth.
Yeah.
But yeah, seems like it's not debatable,
hmm
past six. So
I think part two of that, besides, establishing a good sleep schedule, would be maybe finding someone who has more of an insight into the dietary world. Find a dietitian, sit down with them, have them analyze what you like track what you eat for a week, like 1 week, and bring it to a dietitian and see what they say. I actually want to do that. There's someone here in the Dayton area that I'd like to sit down with and just bring what I eat in a week and be like, okay, where can I make improvements? I'm not necessarily training to be like the absolute like craziness in the gym, but I would like to actually I like to move. I like to work out. I mean, I played rugby. I love to be able to do this. And I just want to be able to have these things set in stone now so that I shouldn't say set in stone. I would like to have a good basis to work from that as I continue to get older, that I can continue to basically put myself in the best and most opportunistic position for that. So sleep schedule, find someone to get you on the right track with food and kind of get everything moving in the right direction there. Um, and then I would say, I mean, we already talked about hydration, um, but like actually look into how much you maybe actually need for your activity level. Because a lot of the things I think I've seen out on the internet or that people will find or bring to me so far has been what they need at like just a basis. And it's like, well, does that take into consideration how much you're sweating? Most likely not.
so yeah, it's usually half your body weight in ounces
Mhm.
as a start, and
Yeah.
then it goes up with activity. So the gallon is pretty close for most people.
hmm And I would even
Yeah,
go
yeah,
over how much they work out.
yeah, and to extrapolate forward on this too, like you need something in your water. Like you need salt, and you probably could use creatine too. I
hmm
feel pretty comfortable saying that, because you need to pull the water into the cell because you actually can overhydrate if you don't have electrolytes. And if
hmm
you drink caffeine, you actually excrete more electrolytes. So
hmm
food for thought there too. Um, but yeah, going back to like definitionally, right? We said, HRV, resting heart rate, right? So you can address that by sleep pretty much and down regulating your nervous system. And then we talked about glycogen. So when we talk about like nutrition, we've hammered the protein thing a ton, but you need carbs. Like carbohydrates fuel glycogen storage.
hmm
So it is, if if you like Dr. Mike Israetel, you should listen to him hammer this home. If you're looking for a performance boost, carbs are the unanimous king of this. Like,
hmm
and it's just no questions asked across the board. So yeah, if you are low to no carb and you feel hurt all the time, this is very easily avoidable. You know what else it does? It pulls water into your cell.
hmm
So it's going to help you with hydration. It's going to help you feel fuller. It You probably need it for protein synthesis because your body will probably eat the protein for fuel if you don't have carbs. So carbs are protein sparing, which is great. But by definition, that's kind of what you can control minus your window, meaning that 48-hour recovery window.
hmm
And remember, guys, blood ultimately brings all this stuff to you. So in between sessions, if you want to take a walk, and just use your global body as a pump,
Mm,
that would be a good idea too. But yeah, the acceleration thing, unfortunately, when push comes to shove, it's snake oil salesman,
hmm.
and it's just somebody who's probably trying to get you into their practice because they need cash, which kind of sucks.
Yeah, it does. Um,
And that's another conversation for another time. But I'm happy that like my practice is not reliant on cash based services
mhm,
because that kind of yields you to a strange ethical area. But that is what it is.
true. I definitely think when people start twisting the science to fit their narrative, I mean that like that's a whole soapbox for me. But uh,
Yep.
no, but if you guys have questions on recovery, feel free to reach out. Let us know. Excited to see how some of these projects kind of come to fruition over the next few months. And we will see you guys in the next episode. All right. Take care, guys.